And you do
Oh
make some
yeah.
very good points here about, how you can win actually being a conservative.
Mhm.
Look at the last climate accord before Paris, Kyoto. The
Mhm.
conservatives won on fighting Kyoto.
That's right.
The liberal leader at the time was so keen on Kyoto, Stefan Dion, that he named his dog Kyoto. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah, it
And
was hilarious.
conservatives won a majority on saying this is a bad idea. It gives away too much to the UN, too much control over our economy, and it's bad for Canadian jobs. And they won articulating that because those women in Toronto, those suburban moms, they'll vote for the jobs of their husbands every day of the week. And as conservatives, they've done a terrible job articulating that these days.
Yeah. Well, before Harper was elected, I mean, he called Kyoto a money-sucking socialist scheme. I mean, it can't be any more
He ain't
derogatory.
wrong.
Yeah, you can't be any more derogatory than that. And yet he went ahead and actually won the election.
Yeah.
So I mean, this idea that you have to try to out-liberal the liberals, I mean, it's a stupid idea because liberals are not going to vote for pretend liberals. They're going to vote for liberals.
Yeah.
And, so many of the conservatives went over to the PPC. I mean, I have many people in my family, People's Party of Canada, many people in my family who voted PPC, because they looked at the platform and they said, yeah, I agree with that. But they looked at the conservative platform and they said, no, that's ridiculous, on all kinds of issues. I mean, you remember when the 5 primary leaders all got up and did that, clapping seals thing, get the jab, where they did it all together.
Yeah. They do the same thing on climate change. It's just
that's right.
who's going to put my husband out of work faster when I look at the 5 of them.
Yeah.
And it's I learned something over the last, I think, 5 or 6 years with Justin Trudeau in charge. The liberal voters will excuse a lot of dishonesty. Conservative voters will not. Conservative voters, like Justin Trudeau still has people who will defend him as a feminist and defend him as a racism fighter, despite, groping women and wearing blackface. But I think for conservative voters, we don't like the flip-flops. We don't like finding out that we've been misled. And, conservatives have to earn our vote. And I think Aaron O'Toole's got a long way to go before he can do that. And I'm not sure if he can stay on as leader. I think he thinks he might be able to, but I don't know if he can.
Well, I think the only way he can stay on is if he tries to actually mend fences with the normal part of the Conservative Party, the grassroots, the MPs that know that the climate scare is bogus. And that brings us to the topic of this petition that was just put out by Bert Chen. He's a person within the Conservative Party of Canada. He's one of their national council people, I believe. But anyway, here's what he says. He says, we, the undersigned, request that the National Council of the Conservative Party of Canada commence a referendum to recall Aaron O'Toole as the leader of the Conservative Party. And he lists all sorts of reasons, but the one that I'm most interested in is this, and it's worth discussing a bit. Aaron O'Toole has betrayed, we're talking about the Conservative Constitution, on the following points, and they list several, and the last one is he broke the trust of members who elected him as a leader by embracing a carbon tax, despite his pledge to never implement one during the leadership race. And it's interesting because the Taxpayers Federation of Canada, with our friend Chris Sims and the rest of them there in Vancouver, he actually signed a declaration saying he would not have a carbon tax. Big, they had a big poster and a great photo op and everything else. And he just specifically broke it. And the Taxpayers Federation really attacked him for that. So, I mean, that's the first thing he needs to do, is he has to recognize that if he's going to break major agreements, major pledges, that of course they're going to say, well, then go away. We don't want you as leader. And that's my answer. The only way he really can rescue his leadership, in my opinion, is if he stops his current carbon tax in particular, but other things that he's doing to try to out-liberal the Liberals. So I have a lot of sympathy. I mean, I'm not a member of the party, so I can't actually vote. But last time I checked, they have almost 4,000 of the needed 5,000 votes to actually make the referendum perhaps take hold. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to take hold, but it still would be, if he gets 5,000 votes, he's got a good chance of it. So the trouble is, of course, there's nobody kind of waiting in the wings,
No.
who's an obvious leader. I mean, I think of Pierre Poilievre, he's a possibility. But, Pierre, I like Pierre, but I understand quite a few people don't. Pierre has some baggage of his own from the past. But yeah, that's the trouble for the Conservatives right now. They don't actually have, since they drove Max away, they don't actually have anybody waiting in the wings. And, it's funny because O'Toole attacked Peter MacKay for various things, and in particular, the climate stuff, which now O'Toole is doing himself. So I suppose if they want to switch from one red Tory to another, they could switch to Peter MacKay. But what's the point?
Right.
I mean, you might as well bring in somebody who's really a conservative and who's not going to change their position as soon as they become leader.
If you'd like to get access to my show, as well as other great TV style shows too, like Ezra's Nightly, Ezra Levant Show, and David Menzies' Friday night show, Rebel Roundup, just go to rebelnews.com/subscribe. That's rebelnews.com/subscribe.